Good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Can you all hear me okay? Let me pull my mic over a touch more. Can you hear and see me? Which is pretty important. So before I go into any more detail on this, let me push that along a bit further because I think that's a wonderful gift that I've got. You're on mute. I like that. That's my sense of humour. Let's have a look. Give me a 5 you can see and hear me. And don't forget, we've got a seminar coming up, Western Supermare, all-day seminar, Sunday the 23rd of August, with questions and answers. That information is going to be put out in the chat, and I will try and comment on it as much as I can. So let's get into a couple of things. Right, before I move on to the main part of this, I think I need to say a couple of things, especially about narcissism and dark personality. Lots of people ask me, who is doing this? Why are they doing it? How comes they've got control of all these different elements, and especially the judiciary, especially doctors, especially lawyers, solicitors, police? And the direct answer is dark personality. So you have to be very careful with dark personality, right? What is dark personality? There is a thesis. What's it? How do you pronounce it?
What? I don't know what you mean.
When you do a university thesis.
Oh, yeah, that's it.
All right, I've pronounced it correctly according to the living gnome to my left, right?
That you normally say.
Right. Sean, thank you. I've sent you back an email. If I ignore any of these because coming in, it's because I'm jumping about doing. You can ask Janet what I'm like. I'll get one thing, I'll go on to another call, and go on to another, and then all of a sudden the whole day's gone, and I'm like, I can't even remember where I started with things. So thank you to Sean. Just to make sure everyone, I've got to make sure people understand this. It's really important for me to explain this to you, right? My life has been touched on a couple of occasions by narcissistic people, right? They are evil. I'm going to explain a bit about this for people who don't understand what it is, right? A narcissist, you can be covert, where they're always pretending to be the victim, but really they're not the victim. Whoever they've got hold of is 100% a victim. And you've got an overt. Overt is easier to spot. They believe that there's something special. They believe they're grandiose in who they are, right? Everything is about them. And both covert and overt are extremely manipulative in the way they operate, right? So getting back to who these people are operating, they're 10% of the population. So dark personality, I've spoken about this many times before. Dark personality is 10% of the population, but they elevate themselves into a position of authority, normally unelected authority. So that would be as a judge, that would be as a barrister, that could be, but it's someone who's got control of your life. It could be in the civil service is prime example of a narcissistic nest, right? where they've got control of you and there's nothing you can do about it. They make a decision, it massively affects you, right? But getting back to, so under dark personality, there's 4 groups of people. They all have the same traits and attributes, right? Psychopath, narcissist, Machiavellian, and sadist. They're the 4 groups. They've got a core set of features, right? And that set of features is standard, even if they don't know each other. They've never met each other. 2 people can have traits and attributes almost identical in psychopathic, narcissistic, whatever it is, right? That you can, once you've learned to spot them and you've read about it and you understand it, they jump off the page at you, right? Now, this is the part where some people watching this won't like it, right? But I have to say this to people. Possibly the most evil, narcissistic people out there are transgender. Because what a narcissist does is they create a false persona of themselves, right? So a normal, let's say you've got a covert narcissist that's getting into you, they're always the victim. Right? They play the victim card. If you ask them about something, they'll start, if it's all, they'll start crying, right? Oh, he did this to me, he did this, he did that to me, right? And sooner, and then whoever they're talking about in the background is that they're going around and they manipulate the people around a target, right? That's what they do. And they also try and isolate people, which is crucially important, right? They isolate people. So making sure you understand this, transgenderism is the ultimate persona, fake persona, right? It's someone who is a man, generally a man, that is pretending to be a woman. The ultimate deceit, if they can get away with it, they can make themselves look reasonably attractive. They do certain things like if there's any giveaways, they'll shave they have an operation to shave their Adam's apple, so they haven't, so you wouldn't see an Adam's apple going up and down or anything like that, right? If they haven't had any surgery on their hips to make their hips stand out a little bit better, or to give them that bit of a women's figure, they'll pull a belt in. They'll wear attractive, semi-attractive clothes to men. It is the ultimate evil persona, right? It's a persona. But what's worse than that is they force that false persona on you. And even if you've seen through what they are, nothing to do with the fact that they're transgender, but they are narcissistic, they will do so. There's a set group of things that they will do in the background. That's what they do. It's standard, right? But you'd have to go and read about it, right? My point to you is that anyone who accepts transgenders, right? You're accepting, in my view, the ultimate evil persona, right? Someone who is forcing upon everyone else the fact that they are a man, but their persona is a woman, and they are conning people in general. This pretense they're a woman when they're not, they're a man. It's the ultimate evil, right? I can't think of a persona from narcissism that is any worse than that one, right? And then the rest of the narcissists have put things in place so that narcissism, you can't talk about it, you can't strike back at it, you can't do any of them things, right? They are the nastiest form of narcissistic personas there is, bar none, right? So all I'm doing is explaining to you that dark personality is what, and I'm going to get onto the main subject in a minute. That dark personality, the way they operate and what they do is they look for empathetic people. They look for people that do actually care, and they integrate themselves in. And some people can't see it, right? Because there's some things that narcissists do, and trust me, I've looked at things and thought, why did they do that? And they lie for no reason, right? I mean, most people have got a reason for lying. They lie for no reason whatsoever, right? Just because they want to manipulate, no other reason, right? And I've seen things happen with these narcissistic people. They're very dangerous, right? And I want you all to understand that there's four separate types of dark personality. I'm going to say it again: psychopath, narcissist, Machiavellian, sadist. They've all got the same. There's about 20 traits and attributes that are identical. You can actually go through it and list it. And if you started reading through it, you could say, I know someone who does that. I know someone who does that. I know someone that. When they've got them traits, right, they're narcissistic or they're psychopaths, right? Now, so to give you an indication, there was a very famous, I'll think of his name in a minute. Someone in the chat will probably know this better than me. There was a psychopath in America. He was a serial killer. And psychopaths, as with narcissists, right, rely on your empathy to draw you in so they can attack their target, right? And in particular in America, this particular guy, right, pulled up in a van, opened his side door, and he had a plaster cast on, a sling, and he was all like that, and he was trying to get something into the side of his van, right? And a woman come along with a empathy, right, and said, "Oh, well, let me help you, Mr. Man," right? Gone to the side. He's manoeuvred round. So she's picked up this object and helped him into the van with it, but she's got into the van, right? Her own empathetic nature is placed her in the back of this guy's van. Once he's moved into position, right, he steps up, shut the door, takes his thing off, rapes her and murders her, right? So her empathy is what lowered, right, the warning signals. Don't go. So if you're a woman, do you think you'd walk along and get in that person's van? If a man's standing there saying, "All right, love, will you just get on the back phone? Can you just help me do something in the back?" Or would you go, "Oh, hang on a minute, what's he trying to get me in the back of a van for?" But standing there with a plaster cast on, which was all fake, right, and a sling on, all fake. I think he was outside an hospital, right? But he relied on the empathy of the woman to actually rape and then kill her. And he was a serial killer, right? In America, someone will probably shout out who the thing is. I've got it upstairs somewhere who that person is, right? Why am I telling you this? Because lots of different people, and especially groups of people like us, will come under attack by narcissistic people. And the ultimate narcissist persona is that of a man pretending to be a woman, right? It's the ultimate evil. It's what I describe as, because they're called children. Little children wouldn't, oh, it's a woman, right? they are very dangerous people, right? And they rely on, in particular, on Christian empathy, right? Let me tell you something. If Islam ever got control of this country or Europe, then people would be bang in trouble, right? Not just minorly. I mean, literally, they would be stoned to death, right? The other irony of them people, which you can see, is that the transgender male to woman, right, then says to people, Ted Bundy, that's it, well done, Julia, Ted Bundy, it was, well done, right? The persona of the transgender, who is then becoming or presenting to you the ultimate con. I'm not a man, I'm a woman. Oh, I'm a woman, right? They're actually a man in woman's clothing, but then they have another part of the persona which says they're a lesbian, right? Do you understand what I'm saying? So they've still got the male hormonal element that is attracted to women, right? The reason I'm telling you this is because it's very, very, very important that people understand that narcissism, they don't understand that there is a whole document out there, and they don't like it, right? That is a blueprint. This is what you should be looking for. And I've read that document 4 times, right? And certain individuals stand out, right? You think, oh, I don't like this. And then something could happen, right? And it's happened to me previously, maybe a year, 18 months ago now. Where the best thing you can do with that person is shut them off, right? Because if you shut them off, their true anger, instinct, viciousness comes out, right? And they start to show who they really are. The persona is broken, right? Because all of a sudden you've got someone saying you're not who you say you are, right? They do not like that, right? It is the ultimate, and just to let you know, with a narcissist, they will never ever forgive, ever. It could be 10 years time or 20 years time. They're still thinking how to come back at you and destroy you. That's what narcissists do, right? So you've got to be very careful. But one of the things I want everyone to understand is the group of people that are in control of this planet, right, are narcissistic. They're 10% of the population. 90% of the population are what's known as neurotypical, right? Just like me and you. Have empathy, don't want to go to war, don't want to do all these different things. But with that 90% of neurotypical, you're also empathetic and can be drawn into the web of the narcissist, right? Be very careful of who tries to suck you in. And it's not the first time. I've seen it a million times. Does everyone understand what I just said? Right? All I'm doing is warning people. I'm just warning you, right? And there's certain elements out there that are more easily sucked into that web than anyone else, right? Just to let you know. Anyone could be sucked into that web. It's only when you absolutely know, and all it is a trigger point, right? There's certain things that you look for and you go, "Oh, hold up," right? And you may not be seeing certain trigger points. I may see them. Someone else may come along to me and give me something, and I go, "That's a trigger." Someone else may say and go, "There's a trigger." Sean Tyler. Yeah, so Tony Blair. There are many of the politicians are narcissistic. I would say that certain politicians that are put into place rather than elected are narcissistic in nature or psychopaths in nature, because it is the actual civil service that's putting them into place, right? But the ultimate of that, and you've only got to go and have a look at some of these people online. Who was the lady who, or guy? Oh, she was it Aberdeen University? The one who said all that nastiness about Anne Whitcomb. You can see, like, but it's dressed as a woman. It's a man, but vicious narcissism, right? How much she hated Anne Whitcomb, right? And again, she was up there. So just to make sure you get all that, lots of people are sucked in by narcissists. Yeah, they are, and there's various reasons for it, right? There's lots and lots of classic reasons for it. They use all of those things. They are very dangerous people, right? And all I'm saying is you need to be very, very, very careful. And some of the things that I do, you don't see everything that I see, right? And I'm not gonna come on here and explain to you all these different things. I don't want to give them clues about the things that I'm looking for, right? I would rather know trigger. If I'm wrong, right? If I'm wrong about someone, there's a way of me knowing that I'm wrong about them, right? And I'm not even going to tell you what that is, right? But with some people, right, and you can ask the people who've known me for a long time, they'll tell you, you knew exactly what they was going to do, what they was going to say, right? And they was like thinking I was some sort of genius. I said, it's not genius. There's a set pattern. And if you do X, they'll do this. If you do that, they do this, right? And then everyone was like, fuck me, wow, right? So just to let you know. And people that are easily suckered in by that, we don't want them around us, right? Because this job is hard enough, and us as a group moving forward is hard enough without having them people go, whoa, right? You just don't want to get involved with it at all. Let's have a look. Any other? Right. So what I'm going to do now is we are going to go back and I'm going to show you something, right? Because I think it's important that you see this. Right. Before I get into the final subject, I'm going to show you this. Hopefully it's up on the screen. No, not that one. Where am I? All right. So just to make sure we continue on the right format here, it is Sue Ellen's birthday, right? Are you ready? You've all got to sing happy birthday, and I want to see loads of English flags in the chat. Ready? Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Sue Ellen. Happy birthday to you. How's that? That is to Sue Ellen that's in our chat.
Happy birthday.
Mm-hmm.
Happy birthday.
Janet, you have to shout that out louder.
Happy birthday, Sue Ellen.
Even Janet shouted out, happy birthday, Sue Ellen. She joined in for you there. How's that? All right. I'll see if it comes up. Let's see if it comes up there. And don't forget, I am only about England. Now, the next thing that I'm going to bring up on my screen is this, right? And then we're going to go through something else because I think it's really important, right? So here's a page out of a book. Now, what I'm going to do is start to tell you, this is Sir Stephen Sedley. He was an appeal court judge. And in this book, he talks about the Constitution, and he also talks about administrative law, right? Judicial review, in other words. But he also talks about policy. Now, there's something I'm going to say to you now. It's a double-edged sword, right? In 2009, 2010, there was a famous case of a woman that had progressive multiple sclerosis, is it? It weren't very nice, and she knew she was dying. She was banging trouble. Her husband basically was going to take her to wherever, Switzerland or whatever, because she decided she had made the rational decision. She wanted to die in a nice way, and she wanted to do it before she got so bad that she couldn't do it herself. She wanted to go out. So, but they needed clarification from the Department of Public Prosecutions, because they said that if you assist someone in a suicide, whilst you haven't helped to actually commit the suicide, you have assisted. Therefore, that is basically manslaughter, right? Or not, second degree murder, they called it, right? So this woman and her legal team wrote to the Department of Public Prosecutions and said, we want clarification, right, on your prosecution policy, right? Remember what I just said, prosecution policy, right? What is your policy on this? So they come back and they had this big consultation with a number of different groups, and they basically come out of all this spiel about, well, we would look at this and look at this and look at that. And their policy, by the way, the person who was in charge of this was Keir Starmer, right? So remember what I just said, Keir Starmer was important. It was in charge of that policy. Now, there is an argument on both sides. I'm not doubting that, and I understand if you've got some severe illness and there's absolutely no way out, and you wanna take your own life because you want to do it and you want to be in control. I understand that. What I absolutely cannot and do not agree with, the difference with an adult making a rational decision to end their life for a specific set of reasons that are, medical in nature, and they are the ones making the decision, not someone else, right? And I still believe it should go before a coroner's court, right, and a jury, where both sides can be put on, and a jury makes a decision whether they chop themselves or not, right? So there's arguments for and against. I'm not going to get involved with any of them arguments for and against, right? One thing that I absolutely draw the line on is abortion, the murder of an innocent, someone who cannot make the rational decision to end their own life, and someone else has decided to do it for them, right? For no apparent reason other than they can, right? I have always, from a child, believed that is wrong, right? And what I'm saying is, it can't be that. And what's happening now is disgusting. But this all leads on to what I'm about to say to you, right? Now, in this book, they talk about policy, right? So I'm going to read out something which don't forget, this is a senior appeal court judge. I think he was an appeal court judge, second highest judge in the country, right? For something like 20 years, right? So he ain't no muck. And he is actually interesting, right? And he's also got the history of Cromwell was in the book, and where he says that all of the stuff that Cromwell put in place during the interregnum, right, has now been implemented, even though at the Restoration they burnt the integrant, they burnt the instrument of governance. They hanged and drawn and quartered the people who delivered it for the people. But yet everything that was put in place in that total 12-year period, right, since then has been put in place, except Cromwell went bang and done it in one hit, right? There's some recent things that have happened. Well, that all come from Cromwell, right? So once you understand that and understand that, I'm gonna show you something that I think everyone should understand, where I'm coming from, and then I'm going to tell you something else. Hopefully it will come up on the screen. Right, so hopefully you've got this on the screen, right? This is a picture I've took on my phone and sent it to myself, right? So it's cutting it out slightly, but contrary to law, because each policy is configured to such hard law as there is in its field of operation, any challenge for simple illegality is improbable. But there is a constitutional question, right? So this is a long-term second highest judge appeal court, right? Bearing in mind Sir John Laws, right? Also, constitutional question. What does he say? Article 1 of the Bill of Rights 1689 declares that the pretended power of suspending of laws or the execution of laws by regal authority without consent of Parliament is illegal, right? It's really important that people understand that, right? Now, I'm going to go through this and then go back to it, right? Is a policy of non-prosecution in an entire class of cases as distinct from an individual decision not to prosecute. A pretended power of suspending the execution of laws. It's a pretended power. So this is where the government is saying that its policy or its guidance is law. Now, we've already had this, COVID, right? Where we stood up and said, your guidance, your policy, don't override. Remember my little card I've got here somewhere, which I don't think I've got. Here, right? We used to take these cards out with us, and again, if I showed it to you, which I will in a couple of minutes, right? We was the only people that were talking about our constitution. We was the only people that were talking about our constitutional rights, right? So it's there by a published prosecution policy, right? So there's the word. See the word policy, and the accused asserts that he or she is within the class which the DWP has undertaken not to prosecute. For example, because he or she has acted out of compassion in assisting a spouse's suicide. When, in such a case, an application is made to the trial judge to dismiss or stay the proceedings for an abuse of process, can the DPP properly submit that it is only a policy and creates no legal rights? It is hard to imagine that she would wish to, and then it goes on, right? So what I'm trying to do is just show you that information, right? Now, as I look at this, and I'm going back, have a look what it says there, pretended power, a pretended power of suspending the execution of laws, right? And I'm going back to this, Article 1 of the English Bill of Rights. Now, why is that important again? Because there was an important constitutional case, and there's a number of them, right? Our solicitors, barristers, lawyers, and even judges, right, are not taking instruction from people like you. So part of the reason we're doing what we're doing is because you need to force your barrister and a solicitor to carry out your direct instructions, right? And that is the English Constitution and your constitutional rights. And you should be brave enough and intelligent enough to understand what the law is, right, and push it forward, right? Now, and I realise if you're in a Crown Court and you're standing in front of a judge, and the judge is saying, I'm not going to listen to any of this nonsense, then you're the one who's got to stand up and say, listen, you took the oath, and not only that, you're only sitting there because of the Act of Settlement, right? You're only sitting there in representing the Crown of England because the Crown took an oath. So if you're all perjuring your oaths, you're all acting unlawfully. It's the judge's job to direct the jury on the law, right? not in what they can do or not do as they can only direct on the law, not on the fact, right? So, and they can't direct a jury to find you guilty, right? So, Article 1 of the Bill of Rights 1689 declares that, so I'm going back to this again, that the pretended power of suspending of laws, or the execution of laws by regal authority is someone from a civil service department, and the Secretary of State, for example, is exercising what they perceive to be the law, but it's actually, and they've declared it as a policy, right? So I'm going to get to the reason why this is in a couple of minutes, right? Because I think this is crucially important for everyone to understand. There was a case, Muldoon versus Fitzgerald, 1975, in New Zealand, right, where a minister had stood up and said that he was either creating or suspending a law to do with taxation, and this is what we're doing, and it comes into effect on Monday, for example. He said it on a Friday, and this guy stood up and said, you can't do that. And in effect, the decision maker who had announced this, made a proclamation, basically, turned around and said, oh, yes, we can, right? And we went to the High Court in New Zealand. And in that case, the High Court in New Zealand said, no, you can't do that. The subject of New Zealand is protected, and so are the people of New Zealand by the English Bill of Rights, where you cannot use the pretended power. You cannot suspend laws and you cannot execute laws because you believe you had regal authority to do it. You cannot rule by proclamation, right? Why is that case so important? And that's just one of them, by the way. There's quite a few of them. And I'll get on to another part of this in a couple of seconds. It's really important people understand this. So what the state has done to me is they have said, you must give us the bank statements, PayPal accounts, all of the information on the English Constitution Party Limited, right? So there's two elements to that. One is there's no suspicion of anything's wrong. Most of the information resides with, well, all resides with the Electoral Commission, and what I've said to them is, I'll if you want the Treasurer to write a letter, you tell us what information you're looking. This is important. What is it you're looking for, right? They come back and they said to me, no. We've asked for this. We have a look through. Listen to the words. Look through policy. We want this information, and by law, we can have that information, right? Well, the law doesn't say that. In fact, the law exempts any limited company that is not a trading company and doesn't deal in property or have as its assets any property. When I say property, I mean property where it's got an income coming in, it's got an asset value that goes up or down, property, right? Normally meaning an office building of such, right? Because if I'm the sole person, or I've got sole control over it, or most control over it, they're saying that we can take that whole thing as an asset of yours, and therefore you're not entitled to universal credit or any other form of benefit, right? But the exemption exists, right? But not only that, their policy, right? This is the important thing because it affects everyone, right? Don't just affect me; it affects everyone, and that's the point that people have got to understand. Their policy is that they don't have to have reasonable cause; they can just randomly select me. Now, I don't believe they've randomly selected me, right? But someone who's running a political party, and you've randomly selected them. Right? That's some random selective, right? And bearing in mind my private details, even though I don't believe I should have done, I've given it to them. Right? I should never have complied by that, but I did. Right? But it also shows that I'm being reasonable, and they're being unreasonable. Right? And I've taken advice to that effect. I haven't refused to give them any information. What I've said to them is, why do you want it? Tell me why you want it. And they've come back and said, because our look-through policy says that we must have it and you must give it, right? Well, that's not the law. Policy is not the law. So what's the secondary element of this policy and what it's doing? This is crucially important, right? Is that they've actually... Let me come off of that a sec, because I want to make sure I get this bang on the money. They have actually, so while I speak of this out, they're subverting your constitutional right to privacy, right? By using a policy, and they go against the long and entrenched constitutional right, and particularly the judgment in Entick versus Carrington, 1765, right? Not to mention also Article 8, I think it is, of the European Convention of Human Rights. I'm not really interested in that. I'm more focused on the English constitutional right, in particular, that they're not allowed to do these things in the background. Now, you can use them rights in the High Court, right? And it should be pushed that they are looking at this, right? So they should have probable cause. And in the instant of the English Constitution Party Limited, not a trading company, not a company dealing in property or involved with property in any way. It's not renting out houses. It's not doing anything, right? It's got no assets as such, right? It is purely as an identity for the English Constitution Party as an electoral body. It's got a structure. That's it, right? And it's a separate legal identity. So therefore, being as it's a limited company, it's not trading. It's not this. It's only for political purposes. They've got no right to ask for that information. And what they've done is said, well, we're going to cut everything off. Not because you're not entitled. This is I want everyone to listen to what I'm saying, because this is important. Not because you're not entitled to it, but because you haven't provided it by that date, and that's the date we told you to provide it by. And if you haven't provided it by that, we're not suspecting, we're not accusing you, we're not suspecting you've done anything wrong. We're not saying you're not entitled. In fact, you could be entitled to more money. That's what they told me, right? It's the fact that you haven't complied by that date, right? You haven't given us that information. Now, under the normal legal process, for whatever it is, if they was to knock on my front door and stand there and say, I want your physical bank statements and your PayPal details and this and that, and ask for a number of things, right? I would say to him, one, why do you want it? And two, no, you can't have it. Why do you think you've got the right to knock on my door? And then they come over my threshold, pick up the statements and walk out of them, right? What would they need to do that? What? One, probable cause, and two, a warrant, right? Neither. They haven't got probable cause. They've already admitted that. This is just a random thing, right? So one of the other things about general, you're not allowed to go on a fishing expedition. If they did come in here and get a warrant, right, to go through all my, they would have to say, we are specifically looking for X, right? I don't know, a bottle of Dr. Pepper Zero, right? In relation to, we believe it is counterfeit and you are counterfeiting Dr. Pepper Zero. They couldn't then come in and pick up Robinson's or a can of Coke or coffee jar or start looking at the Vonix kit or start looking through the books to see if there's any reason what there's anything a bit iffy around books, or they couldn't. There's nothing. They'd have to be specific. They're not allowed to go on a fishing expedition, right? I'm not sure. I think it might be Janet who told me there was a specific thing. If they was to come into your house and they're looking for a radio cassette out of the car, they're looking for stolen radio cassettes, right? They're not allowed to come into your house and look in a jury box the size of that, right? When radio cassettes like that, right? It's fairly obvious that should have nothing to do with a search, right? So if they was to then open that up and find a ring and say this ring is stolen, they can't take it, they can't touch it, they can't nick it, can't do anything, right? Because that's an unlawful search. It's unlawful to do what they've just done. They're not allowed to do it, right? Does everyone understand what I just said? Right? So so for me, I'm thinking, why? I mean, why have they targeted me? Out of all the fact, bearing in mind what I do, bearing in mind I do this for an hour a night, bearing in mind, I go out live. Why are they targeting me? If you look at the Chester, the case, we've won in the High Court. We started court. We're standing there telling judges and the calling the CPS a bunch of crooks. We're calling civil servants dirty, no good, whatever they are, right? Because they are, right? They're evil people, and we're calling it out. Next thing you know, right? Let's give him some ag. We'll use the process as a punishment, right? All of that's illegal. But someone has to stand up against it, right? Now, I could be genuinely made homeless now. I could be living, I don't know what's going to happen or where I'm going to be living. But what I'm trying to say to you is then you get, and I'm going to say this once in the calmest possible way possible, right? You get these other people who try and get into you, right? You get this, listen, in various ways they do it. And then we get people that have followed for a little while, not been with us for 10, 15 years like many of you have, right? Some great people out there understand what we're doing, right? I understand that we are a distinct group of people, right? But you'll get people coming into that group and then they'll say, I ain't having that, right? Just to make sure everyone's aware, there are certain people I've now blocked, even though they had nothing to do with another situation, right? I don't want them people around me. That you're part of the problem because you can't think for yourself, right? I haven't got a problem with people having a disagreement with me. What I've got a problem with is the triggers, and it is me personally, that's under attack from the system, right? And I certainly am not going to allow the encouragement of these people in the background, right, to pile on even more shit. I'm not interested, right? And that's why I've blocked a lot of these people and said I don't want you around me. Go away. Go somewhere else. There's plenty of places you can go play. Go and play over there, right? But Liam, drop me out. While you're sitting in your little flat drinking your half a lager, getting all lagging and all that, right? So let's take the country back and never actually do anything, right? By the way, I'm going to make sure I emphasise this. So I want everyone to understand this. I'm not having a go at this current audience. I'm just letting you know, right? I could do certain things in the background that will trigger people, right? Someone got blocked last night, right? And then they contacted me and said, I've been blocked. And I sent a fucking laughy face back and said, yeah, by accident. she was just in the wrong way. And he was just laughing. But he didn't, there were no freaking out, starting attacking and all that. It just, well, you know. And even if I said to him, yeah, no, you're blocked, you're in the sin bin for a week. And what have I said? This. Can I come back on? No, not for a week. right? But it's the way people react to it. If they react and say, all right, because of this, you think I shouldn't, and just let me make sure I'll say this before I get on to the next subject. I want everyone to understand this, right? Before I get on to the next part of the subject. A certain person that I blocked on Twitter, then blocked in this chat, then blocked in the other chat, and has already created another persona, right? And coming in doing different things. It's already been contacting other different people and other channels, right? You can tell by the way they react that they've ticked the boxes that I was correct in my judgment. And I don't have to explain all of the little trigger points, and I don't want to, right? All the little that made me conclude this person's a wrong, right? And just to emphasize this, at any time on Twitter, right, prior to them doing silly stuff on Twitter and getting into all sorts of silliness, right, that person had an open messaging system because it had already messaged me a number of times, right, and I'd already been communicating other times, but this person chose to keep it public, right? And the person they was arguing with, which I had nothing to do with, by the way, person they was arguing with has also got a personal open channel to me, right? Just to let everyone know, right? So you're not seeing everything that I see. I see a lot more than what people think, right? And by the way, I also take opinions on board from other people to say, is my thinking correct on this? And then other people, and then someone else can say to me, which I thought was, they come out with saying, and I went, when did this happen? And they go, blah, 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 blah. Right, I won't say what it was. I don't want it repeated if you're listening in the chat. And I went, well, you could have told me that bit, right? Which was another big tick, right? So all these little different things happen in the background. We have a very special group of people. I consider us to be educators. I don't consider myself to be political. I don't think there's anything special about me, right? Although some people disagree with that, right? I'm just a normal everyday bloke, right? Who is now going to be severely under the cosh, right? Because I refuse to back down to these people. I refuse to surrender to these people, right? But I'm telling you now, we ain't going to get any legal help, right? There are, even though I have just shown you on the screen what a High Court judge said, right? And I'm talking about an appeal court, right? For 20 odd years, has just said about the English Bill of Rights. Whose fault is it that it's not being presented to the judges? Right, the solicitors and the barristers, because they're crooks, right? And it don't matter how much you pay them people, they ain't going to push the argument. This is the argument you need to use. Oh no, right? Because they're wrong. Getting on to the next subject. Are you all happy with what I just said? You all sort of understand what I'm saying, and you all understand that the like I say, people really do need to understand that the government, just like COVID, they have attacked me with saying that they consider it to be a policy that's having a major effect on my life, and it is not law. They are misinterpreting the law completely, in my opinion, and they use coercion, and then Bomb said, that's it, you ain't complied, bang. They're not saying you're not entitled. They're saying because you never complied with our policy and the instructions we gave you, that's the end of it, right? They could do that to any one of you tomorrow, right? If they say, well, our policy is that you have to pay us £1,500 a week to live in your freehold house, right? That's their policy. What are you going to say, right? All I'm saying to everyone listening to this, right? whilst I would obvious if a situation like that stepped in, but let me tell you something. Most people out there would pay the £1,500 a week. Right? They comply, even though it's completely wrong. The government are the criminals, and people need to understand it. Right, I'm now going to get back into something else because I think it's important. Where is it that I've put it? And then I'm going to show you something else, which I think was hilarious. Right, I'm going to bring this back up on the screen. But does everyone understand what I'm saying? No taxation without representation, know your inalienable rights. Yeah. And by the way, that particular case actually come up with Lord Denning, and it was to do with them putting up the licence fees for the BBC. And he said, we've got a Bill of Rights. But remember, Sir John Laws said there is a hierarchy of laws. It's still law. And he spelled it out. And he said the Magna Carta, the Bill of Rights, and he said the Act of Settlement. He went right the way through them, and I've shown you on the screen that book, one of them books there, and I've shown you it where it actually says these are the fundamental laws of England. Right, so if the judge goes against that, they're actually breaking the law. The problem is when you go to a solicitor or a barrister, they're not presenting that. The same as when you go to a doctor. And you say, I've got this wrong with me. Instead, they give you pharmaceutical bullshit, right? Instead of saying you need to take selenium, magnesium, ding, and build your body back up, and your symptoms will completely go away. We'll cure it rather than treat the symptoms of what you're lacking. Do you all understand what I've just said to you? Right? No different, again, this conversation earlier, the periodic table, right? If you take certain things, the periodic table, there are things that we haven't discovered yet, which I think they have, and they're not telling us. But it's not been fully filled in yet. But if they took certain things out and then presented this revised table to chemistry teachers in university, and then said to the chemistry students, when you go and teach your students in such schools, right? This is the periodic table, and they look at it. There will be a period in time where some of them teachers will say, "Hang on a minute, you're missing that, right?" Well, then if you go on 2 or 3 generations, them proposed chemistry teachers and the people teaching it will not say you're missing that, and that, because by the time you've gone over time with it being missing from the periodic table, they won't know any different. They'll think they're teaching you chemistry and the periodic table when they're not, right? Do you understand what I've just said then? Do you get what I mean? So the generational thing is important because over time, then people will just accept it. Was there another instance of that I could explain it? What was the one I used earlier? It was on the tip of my tongue as I was finishing that off. It'll come back to me. Let's have a look. Right. This is actually the subject matter of the whole show, right? Can everyone see that on the screen? What do you notice about that? Does everyone understand that is the coat of arms of the English or the Commonwealth Parliament, technically in London, under Oliver Cromwell? Does everyone understand what that is? What do you notice about that? And the key difference? Right, let me just say that. See this person, England till I die, ban them from the show and ban them from YouTube and tell them to fuck off, right? That's the end of that one. Right. Some people are idiotic, right? And I'm not interested in them. So let me just make sure I'm clear on this, right? The elements of this, right? Let me go back over to that one. Look at the emblem, right, on the screen. Make sure you look at the emblem on the screen. What can you see on that emblem, and what's a major difference between that, right, and the current one, right? So tell me what you think it is. Tell me what you think it is. Tell me what you think it is. There's a dragon instead of a unicorn. So what you're actually saying there, right, is England and Wales. Remember, what we're talking about is the common law jurisdiction. So what is it that Cromwell was actually supporting? The Protestant religion, the common law, right? And if you go and read anything that he did in the interregnum, he was all about that, right? Nothing else, right? And that was his emblem, right? Now, at the Restoration, as far as I'm remembering, in Parliament, they brought all the dies of this, right? So the actual mouldings so they could create these, and they brought them into Parliament and smashed them up with an hammer, right? They also set alight to the instrument of governance and the laws that they put in place, right? They absolutely slaughtered it, right? But have a look at that image. So what you should be seeing on this image is you've got England, right? There it is there, England, Scotland, and then you've got Ireland that's represented with a harp, right? But most importantly, so think about let's call it the political union, the Union flag, right? Think about the Union flag. It's really important you think about the Union flag, right? There is no representation of Wales on a Union flag, but there is on the Cromwellian emblem, on the Cromwellian Parliament. Like they are seen to be equal to England on that emblem, right? And then one of the things that you'll realise about the Cromwellian Parliament, the Cromwellian instrument of governance, which was the fully codified English Constitution, is it spoke about, there was no reference anywhere to any form of British, right? There was nothing about British or Britons or anything, right? He spoke of England, Ireland and Scotland. Wales, and you can see from this image, he considered was part of England, right? The common law of England and the common law of Wales, we was together, even though we respected the culture of Wales, right? That little image in the middle there, right, is Cromwell's own personal coat of arms, which was the lion, the English lion, and it didn't have a crown on it, right? He wasn't interested in that. And there's again, you've got the crown, you've got the Commonwealth, you've got the lion with a crown on it again, the lion with a crown on it again. You know, the Welsh haven't got a crown because they've come under the common law jurisdiction of England, and there was a whole reason for that. That happened in 1536, right? But my point to everyone listening to this, and especially the Welsh, right, you was represented under that system in a big way. You was classed as equals to the English, technically, right? And then Scotland, right, was regarded as a separate nation. England was a separate nation. Ireland was a separate nation. And dominions, so the external areas of England, meaning the 13 colonies of what became the United Independent States of America, they were dominions. They were not colonies. They didn't become colonies until the British, in effect, took control of it via when it becomes centralised with the Acts of Union of 1706, 1707, right? And then the colonies switched from the dominions switched from being dominions, which are independently governed, right? So the other thing to notice about this, and if you go and read some of the stuff on there, and bearing in mind prior to James the First, which was James the Sixth of England, prior to James the First of Scotland, that's it. That's the way it was. I always get confusion the numbers of kings and queens, right? The executive of Scotland and the executive of England were separate, right? And what he tried to do was to make sure that continued. The Commonwealth, as it were, wasn't a political union in any way. You was independent. You might have come back to the law lords of England because we had 1100 years of common law, but not. It was only to make sure the continuity of law was there. Does everyone understand that, though? Does everyone understand that? Please check out England merch shop. That's Llewellyn, thank you. Right, everyone get that. That's it. Let's see if there's anything else. I'm going to tell you something else that's quite funny as well. I remember years ago, there was a guy, it was during the time of the dragons, right? And there was some guy that was putting himself out as a billionaire, right? And he wanted to talk to me and invest in what we was doing, right? And he pulled up in a Range Rover, right? Brand new Range Rover. He had a brand new Rolex on. The thing I remember most about him, he had dirty fingernails, right? It ain't generally what a billionaire would look like. Bought me a 2 bob meal in this hotel, right? And he was telling me about how he owned an island, right? Remember what I said about personas and about the deceit, right? He owned an island in the Caribbean, and that he actually had, I think he said 2 F-15 fully armed, right? And I was like listening to him, and then there was a group of people who said, "Oh, like he's going to invest all this money and all that." I said, "He's not who he says he is. He's mentally unstable, right?" And they was going, "No, he's this," and I said, "I don't care what he says he is, right? Anyone who tells you that they have personally got 2 F-15s fully armed on a private island right next door to the United States within striking range, I can guarantee you they're fucking lying, right?" Anyway, it turned out in the end, it's exactly that, right? It was but all these people was fighting in the background. "Oh, I want to go and see my, I should do the negotiations and all that." I was like, I'll tell you what, are you people really that stupid, right? One of the biggest things for a con, right, is the person has to want what you're offering. In some way, you have to trigger some form of greed in that person, right? You don't get that with me. I'm just looking at them. I'm looking at the personality. That's it. So, again, we are going to lose a few people. That was the intention of that person entering the group, right? That was the sole intention. So them people that have gone all wacky around that person, well done. All you've done is shown how fucking thick you are, right? And we don't want you round us, right? Go somewhere else. Don't come near us. We're not interested in you. That's it. But I do want to say, that we are progressing with certain things, and I'm waiting to get back to a couple of people today or tomorrow. But that's it. All we're going to do is carry on with our seminars, which are doing well. The seminars and the training is to give people. Is Ace Jace out there? See, Ace Jace, you're back on, are you? Right, careful what you say, son. I might ban you. It weren't me who did it anyway. Right, love you, Graham. I hope you haven't. I hope I haven't upset you. White Dragon. While looking at the Wall of China video and seeing that it looks like keeping China out, thoughts and things. Right, but just to make sure everyone's aware of this, there is a difference between free speech and someone who is deliberately agitating in the background. Right, remember that. And certain things going on in the background that you're not seeing at all, right? And I see more than most. But I am more than pleased that some of them people, right, have now showed themselves of what they are, right? You do not want them people wrapped around you, right? You want them gone. They are not your friends. They will just jump onto another channel now and carry on doing what they're doing. That's not what we're about. Some of us have been doing this exact thing and expanding it, and we're getting somewhere, right? Expanding it. We've got different people speaking to us in the background, right? Trust me when I say this, that the people that are having these conversations with us in the background, that some of these infiltrators are trying to dig in and stop it getting there. Right, it's too late. We're already having the conversations, and the people that are watching this that are no good. Right, F-15s were around 25 million in the 80s, and the maintenance cost. Could you imagine? Well, I can't remember what it was he said he had, but it was ridiculous that he said they was fully armed. Right, I just like that ain't going to happen. Right, it's got a private army with fucking F-15 jets armed, right? So press a button, the rockets launch, right next door to America. I don't think so. Whilst if there's a national security issue with a private island with its own F-15s or whatever, or F-35s or whatever it is, right, it ain't going to happen. There's a difference between flying in and out with a jet on its own. But I've seen this all before, right? And people who know me know, and then all of a sudden I'll start explaining things and they go, oh, yeah, I remember that. Listen, I remember things, right? And people go, oh, I remember that. Oh, yeah, I remember when they did that. I remember that. And all of a sudden they go, right. And then you can start to put the things in place. I am not interested in this. I don't know what they think they are, but I'm not interested in them. Right? I've banned people before. I ban people again. Right? Whilst this is a free speech platform, this channel is very important to the people and the cause and what we're actually doing. Not right. If you want to play it, go somewhere else. Right. If you want to, if you want to go and stand with the woo woos, go and stand with the woo woos. Right. But drop me out. Absolutely. The only true English party join now. English contributing party. That's it. I will see you all later. Tiddly poo, au revoir, good night, and God bless. Don't forget what I believe in. The Constitution is the solution. It always will be, and we're going to keep going. That's it. Tiddly poo, au revoir, good night,